In this video, I'm going to show you 3 awesome burn builds that you should be using right now, and which one is the best. With St. Elmo's Iron Lung, Xura gear set, and the Ouroboros Massive have thrown Stasis Effect gear at us in year 5, and made more burn builds viable than we have ever had before. But let's start with a classic. For Stasis Effect builds, Eclipse Protocol has been the go-to gear set. Its 2-piece bonus adds 15% stasis effects, the 3-piece adds 15% skill haste, and indirect transmission is a variation on the Creeping Death talent, the twist being that it spreads status effects on kill rather than on application. What makes this good is that burn damage will continue to spread as long as it keeps killing enemies. The duration does reduce by 50% each time it jumps, but the chest piece helps to keep it going by bumping the duration back up to 75% and also increases the range to 15 meters. The backpack also amplifies damage dealt to enemies affected by burn by 30%, which is a huge buff. So the typical status effect build includes the Eclipse Protocol backpack and chest, plus 2 other pieces to activate the 4-piece talent, all of which are rolled to status effects to buff the damage burn does. All of these status effect attributes work brilliantly with the Vile Mask, which applies a debuff to enemies affected by a status effect, dealing damage equal to half of concussion grenade damage, scaled up by the total status effect attribute. Ignoring the maths, this is typically around 1 million damage, but this will be increased by 30% due to Eclipse Protocol's backpack talent. For the final piece of gear, I'm using Fox's Prayer for its 8% damage to targets out of cover. You could go for more status effect damage with the Golem gear or Electric brand sets, or more survivability through armor regeneration from Bellstein Armory or the Emperor's Guard named knee pads. The primary weapon that is used with this build is the Capacitor, whose damage scales off skill tiers and provides a skill damage buff of up to 60%, which does apply to the burn damage done. For skills, I would go with the Burn Sticky Bomb and the Fast Starter Chem Launcher. The Sticky Bomb is a great opener because of the damage it does on detonation, helping to get that opening kill to set off the chain reaction. The Chem Launcher is a great skill as well, but you do need to know how to get the most out of it. Firing it is easy. Hit the relevant skill button, aim and shoot. Then, and this is the important thing, double tap the same skill button to trigger it. It can also be triggered by shooting the cloud, but double tapping is much quicker and catches enemies more reliably. Survivalist is a good choice for specialization because of the damage buff it provides to group members, and also the incendiary grenade for yet another way to apply burn damage. I tested all 3 builds against heroic DUA with 4 directives, and in the open world with 3 directives. This build performs really well in the open world and is particularly good in groups where team members will be killing status affected enemies, helping to spread the burn. Like all status effect builds though, this build struggles against armor plated enemies, and in addition, because burn only spreads on a kill, as a solo player you can easily find yourself being overrun. For that reason, I don't think that this one is the best burn build, and that is why I came up with this awesome build that doesn't rely purely on indirect transmission. The build is very similar to the previous one, using the Eclipse Protocol gear set and the Vile Mask, but it differs in 2 incredibly important ways. Firstly, it uses the Habsburg named backpack, the Courier, which comes with perfect Creeping Death. This is game changing. As soon as burn is applied, it jumps to every enemy within 10 meters and triggers the Vile Mask debuff on all of them. Now burn delivers just awesome crowd control, making enemies unable to do anything but stagger around like the Walking Dead, leaving me free to deal damage and trigger indirect transmission. I do lose out on the 30% amplified damage buff from the Eclipse backpack, but it's worth it for the crowd control and also for how Creeping Death works with the Scorpio exotic shotgun. This shotgun applies stasis effects which are spread by Creeping Death and at the same time trigger the Vile Mask debuff on every enemy it jumps to. This provides incredibly effective crowd control and damage, making it very hard for enemies to overrun me. For the secondary weapon, Test Subject is a great option. Hitting one shot on an enemy which is taking burn damage delivers a 40% skill damage and weapon damage buff, which does also buff the burn damage done. The Habsburg backpack does come with a blue core attribute, so you could farm for hours or even possibly days to try and get a perfectly rolled one, which will allow you to roll the armor to a skill tier. But a better option is to use the Technician specialization for the skill tier it gives you. This is an awesome build for solo players, but there is one final build you should try out, that just might even be better. The Xuro gear set is Division 2's homage to the Division's Firecrest. It transforms the rather lame base incinerator turret into a fire-spitting dragon. The Xuro gear set increases burn duration, buffs the health of the turret, and increases burn damage by a whopping 40%. But the best bit is the 4-piece bonus, which causes the turret to spin 360 degrees, and the backpack talent, which increases its range to 19 meters, meaning no enemy is safe from it. Now, without getting too technical, the chest piece talent is absolute crap. So instead, I would use your skill chest piece of choice with the talent Kinetic Momentum for a 15% damage buff. If you are brave, you could also use Glass Cannon for an even bigger damage buff. Just don't get shot. The Vile Mask is the obvious choice to finish off the build with its debuff. Now clearly this build uses the Incinerator turret for its primary skill. On paper, this turret has one huge issue: its incredibly long base cooldown of nearly 51 seconds compared to its duration of under 30 seconds. The key with this skill is to actively manage it, apply burn to enemies and then turn it off by hitting the skill button again. By doing this you can keep the turret up for minutes rather than seconds, and as we all know, keeping it up longer is always a good thing. The other skill I use with this build is the Fast Starter Chem Launcher, which with the additional burn damage, duration and status effects attribute is a one-shot for everything other than elite enemies. You can run this build with one armor core and the Technician specialization, or with no armor cores and the Survivalist specialization. Both work really well. The zone control of the turret is unbelievable, and in the small rooms of most strongholds or missions, it is an absolute monster. Because of this, I can run the Capacitor for its higher skill damage buff, as I don't need the additional crowd control of the Scorpio. There are some things you need to avoid in order to optimize the build's output, which I've covered in this video here, which you really should check out next. So which of these is the best burn build in the game? Well, they all are in the right circumstance.